Indeed it is, at our fairly new time of 5:45 for the second week on this Friday. It's a welcome return to Debbie Harry. Hi.
Hi.
And you have been on tour now in the UK for several weeks. Around Christmas time you were over here first day.
Yeah, I think our first show was on the 26th.
And how's it been going?
Very well.
You've been enjoying it? Because you've been doing a lot of stuff in a short space of time, really, haven't you?
Yeah, this has been a pretty fast tour, you know.
And how are you coping with tour strain?
I'm still alive, I think.
Looking as effervescent as we would hope for. Also, a welcome for the first time to the Roundtable to Joe Strummer.
Morning.
It feels a bit like that, does it? Because you've just undertaken a tour a week ago. You went to Aylesbury. And you've done 3 or 4 gigs now, haven't you?
Yeah.
And how have they been?
Pretty good, you know. Exhausting, but...
I mean, how do you manage? Do you have any things that you think about to try and get over the strain or fatigue of traveling, doing gigs?
Quarter pound of ice.
And that's it?
Yeah.
John Tobler, welcome back to the Roundtable.
Hi, kid.
What have you been up to recently? Anything interesting?
Well, you might be interested to know that I got a phone call from Van Morrison the other night, and we're thinking about doing a book together.
Really?
Which could be good.
Well, that's an honor, because he's very fickle about the people he phones, far less writing things.
Yeah, I'm well pleased.
Well, congratulations. Okay, here's the first of a pile of singles we're going to play tonight. From the Boomtown Rats, it's new for them. It's Someone's Looking at You. Well, their previous single, Diamond Smiles, wasn't out all that long ago, so they followed that up fairly rapidly with another track from the Fine Art of Surfacing album, and that is Someone's Looking at You, new from the Boomtown Rats. And Debbie Harry, was that a wise decision, do you think, on behalf of the Rats to release that as a single?
Well, I don't know about that, but didn't really thrill me, that track.
I think they've really got a tall order to fill after the success of songs that really became classics like Rat Trap and I Don't Like Mondays.
Yeah.
Diamond Smiles certainly didn't happen like that, and I'm wondering if this is going to suffer the same sort of fate.
I don't know, this one might be one of those ones that builds up, you know, like it has a slow build-up, but then really has a gigantic punch. I don't know.
We will have to find out. But you were kind of so-so about it. Joe Strummer?
I think Rats fans are going to go out and get it, but I shouldn't think anybody else will bother.
Yeah, you think just for committed fans only?
Yeah, you know, it's not going to kind of bring the Chinese over to invade or anything, is it?
They've really kind of concentrated on a more melodic line, the Boomtown Rats. I mean, they came on as a fairly aggressive, rocking sort of band. But do you think that's why? Do you think they should go back to that?
Maybe, you know, get rid of some of the choirs and whatever else was on there. You know, strip it down a bit, I don't know.
Yeah. John Tobler.
I think they've got an albatross around their necks with I Don't Like Mondays, and they've got to follow that before they can ever really make any plans to go any further.
What's it called?
Yeah.
No, it was all right, but it wasn't particularly exciting, I would say. It'll probably be a minor hit. You know,
It'll be, I'm sure, top 40. It's strange talking about records being relative failures when they're even in the chart, I suppose, but it's because, as you say, of the success of Rat Trap and Mondays as well. Okay. This is new for Bonnie Pointer, an old song, previously a hit back in the 60s for the Four Tops. Bonnie Pointer. And I Can't Help Myself, Sugar Pie, Honey Bunch, and it sounds like Anita Ward in the background there ringing a few bells and chimes and things, and a very different version from the one I remember. I'm sure some of our audience won't remember or won't be aware of the original version. Joe Strummer, I guess you are, so how did that fare?
Well, it doesn't compare to the early one, the first version. You know, I find the guitar a bit annoying on that. You know, it sounds like elastic bands or something. A bit cheapo, I think.
Yeah.
I give it naught for the backing.
I think it could have been better, a little more earnest, a little more upfront, perhaps. John?
A bland, innocuous record that will be played to death in discos, I suppose, but I don't go to discos, so that's fine. I won't hear it.
Okay. Debbie?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a no-no, and I wonder, you know, why Bonnie Pointer is, you know, not doing those jazz things. I can understand why she would want to change and do something different, but like they really had something going, I thought.
When the record first came on, you were saying she was trying to sound like Smokey Robinson.
Yeah.
And that's true, yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because she left her sisters, who are now making really fine music, I think. You know, really very upfront, and it's a shame that she's really has gone the other way. And kind of an innocuous record indeed. I Can't Help Myself. Now, I want to ask you about a record that we played on this show a few months ago and played subsequently since on my other program as well, and that was Little GTO by the New York Blondes, which came out not under the name of Blondie, although you were certainly involved on the record. And what was the story behind that record, and why were you trying to preserve that kind of mystery about it?
Well, we weren't trying to preserve any mystery. We were trying to help out Rodney Bingenheimer, who's a DJ from L.A. He's on K-Rock, and he's like one of the only DJs in the world, except for you guys over here, who plays new wave, modern pop music and stuff like that. And we decided to help him out. He wanted to put out a record, make a few dollars, because he doesn't really make any money. And we backed him up with the instrumental, and then I did a vocal to, it was like a guide vocal, because he's not really, a singer. So I, put everything down for him, like in one take. And then the people who produced the record, namely Greg Shaw from Bomp and the Kessel Brothers, put it out behind our backs. And, that's what it amounts to.
Because the record was then withdrawn after a while, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, they didn't have any rights to it, and none of us, we just did it for Rodney.
So you'll be wary of doing anything like that again? I mean, say for me. But
so.
I'm not sure how much money he would make, comparatively speaking, but...
well, maybe we'll all wear masks the next time. They won't know who it is.
Okay. Here's a record that'll have special interest for Joe Strummer, and we'll find out why after we hear the Martian Schoolgirls. This is on the Red Plant record label, and it's called Life in the 80s. The Martian Schoolgirls. Red Plant Records, indeed. It should be, of course, Red Planet Records. And I love the production credit, which John Tobler has just pointed out, produced by Clough Taylor Promotions. Could it be the same, I wonder? That was Life in the 80s, and I said Joe Strummer might know something about the band because Dan Kelleher, who wrote the song, played with you in a band at one time. Is that right?
Yeah, in the early days. He played bass with me.
What group was that?
The One-on-Oneers. He kind of joined about halfway through. This record, it sounds okay, but I'm not sure the song's that brilliant. Maybe another number they could do a bit better with.
Okay. John?
Well, I must confess I never really heard of them. I've certainly never seen them live. I mean, the title Life in the 80s seems a good sort of trendy hook to put something on at this particular point in time, but it didn't seem very outstanding in any particular way, did it? And on an optimistic note that we'll still be here through the 1980s, that's Debbie, Harry.
I have to agree. I like the feeling. I like the beat of the song very much. Had a great feeling, but I can't say much for the song itself.
Okay.
Just didn't really strike me.
I mean, songs are very important to Blondie as a band, certainly, because that's the thing that people obviously know you visually by, but I think also the songs are very strong, and the things, they have hooks to them and all the things that make for good pop songs. And that, in fact, is much the way I feel about the Clash album. James Honeyman Scott, who's the guitarist with the Pretenders, was on Newsbeat on Monday, and he was saying of all the bands that came out of the London punk era, the only band that he really likes and the only band that's done it properly is the Clash, because they have evolved and are now making more melodic music the way they naturally would. And I wonder if this was kind of a deliberate thing that you're now doing, trying to set out to...
Jamming with Mantovani.
Jamming with Mantovani.
Our new next LP, yeah.
I mean, do you see yourselves as that way, as this as a progression, or does it feel like the same thing?
You spend 4 years banging away at something, and you should pick up something. Otherwise, you must be a bit thick.
Were you all fairly new to music when the Clash then started, apart from your excursions with the 101ers?
I think so. Mick Jones had been playing away in his bedroom for a few years, and Topper had been playing drums with funky sort of Scampi and Chips type groups.
Oh, yeah?
So they knew their onions.
Well, I mean, I think it's really the album you can listen to a couple of times, and then there are certain songs, I mean, that do stand out in your head, and I think that's fairly important. This new album, in fact, was produced by Guy Stevens, and I've read a lot of reports now that this relationship you have with is fairly important, and he's important now to you. I do think you'll go on making albums with him.
Well, you better get your head down, kid, because he's about to burst through the door.
He is?
No. I wouldn't be surprised, though. I don't know, we just have to see how it goes, Yeah. I'm hoping that ABBA are going to pick him up for their next outing.
You think so?
Yeah.
This album, although it's a double album, apparently took half the time as the last album you
It's
did. Why,
true, yeah.
why was that?
Well, if you've got someone throwing chairs at your head, you know, you kind of tend to do it quickly.
He making you work.
Yeah, you know, if he runs in the middle of a take, and everyone's like concentrating on not playing a bum note, and he's swinging chairs around his head, and like you've got to concentrate on, you know, mayhem, really.
High energy stuff in the studio, indeed. All right. We move on to brand new EP, in fact, from the Specials. And here's a couple of songs. First of all, a live revamped version of a song that first appeared on their debut album, Too Much Too Young, followed by the Guns of Navarone. Specials, who are pretty hot news at the moment, from the two-tone stable, of course, which for many people was the most significant contribution to the music industry last year. That was a couple of tracks from an EP which is out next week, Too Much Too Young, a familiar song, and another familiar song, not of course by the Specials, but rather Scatolites and Guns of Navarone. And Debbie, I wonder if you're familiar with the two-tone music.
Oh yeah, I like it a lot. And if it wasn't for the fact that I could get this one for free, I'd probably buy it.
Of course, because they're stablemates in a way of yours. Have the Special sound reached America yet?
Well, you know, in certain areas, all this stuff always reaches America, but it hasn't become, you know, it hasn't gotten widespread airplay yet.
I mean, do you think it will? Do you think it will take off? Because it is a uniquely
reggae
British
never
thing,
took
isn't
off.
it? But this is not so much the reggae kind of influence, although it's, I think to an American ear it probably would be, but it's more of the blue beat ska thing, which was big in England in the 60s, that they're kind of recreating.
I don't know. It would be nice if it did. I would like it.
Because, I mean, the biggest thing about it, and the best thing for me, that it really is fun, and that people are really dancing and having a good time to this sort of music, you know. Especially in the area from which it comes, the West Midlands. John Tobler.
Well, I'm worried about the way that crazies are coming and going so quickly. We're going to run out of them shortly, I think.
Earmuffs is the new craze.
Well, don't you think that people will be doing their 1, 2, 3, 4 stuff in about 18 months from now again, Joe?
What do you mean, 1, 2, 3, 4?
Yeah.
Well, let's hope so.
You think that'd be good?
No, not really, I guess. I don't know.
He's eating a tunes at the moment.
Inspiration.
I see. In tune for tonight. Clash, by the way, are playing Crawley tonight, and Blondie will be in London in Hammersmith. But to the Specials, John, and about the music?
It's bound to be a big hit. I'm not quite as sold on this kind of thing as a lot of other people seem to be. Chris Stein over there reckons that the Beats are perhaps the best two-tone group, and I think I might agree, although, of course, we've only heard one single, so heaven knows what the rest of it might be like.
I haven't seen them live, although Peel certainly has come back raving about the Beat. You know, of the two-tone singles last year, I mean, my favorite was the Selector. I'd like to see them as well. I think it's certainly an interesting label, isn't it? I mean, they seem to be putting their profits from their hit singles into nourishing newer acts, which has got to be a good thing.
I wonder how long it can go on, though. I mean, you know, everybody starts off with the best of intentions, but they just don't continue. Business pressures and all that kind of thing. I'm sure Joe could tell us about that too.
Jerry Dammers said that he wanted it right at the onset of two-tone. He wanted two-tone to be the Stax Records of Britain in the 1980s, and obviously we wish him well with that, because that's something to live up to.
They don't sound like Stax Records at all.
No, I think it's just the concept of having a sound on a label. Joe, what about yourself?
Well, I mean, I think it's the first record that's got us moving this evening, and so you got to give it points for that, you know. But they do seem to cover a lot, but still it's good to hear that stuff, you know, like the Guns of Navarone.
I mean, do you sense when you're playing gigs now there's more fun and kind of less of a hostile nature in audiences? Because when you first came on the scene, it got a little bit scary, didn't it, in the audiences? But I think now that the two-tone acts have certainly promoted much more of a fun thing about gigs. And I wonder if that's kind of spread to your audiences.
Well, yeah, I think, you know, this is a good thing. We try and keep all trouble out, you know. If we see any rucks breaking out, you know, we've got this really slow, boring number that we just go into and play it till they plead with us.
Interesting psychology. Listen, I've just been passed a note. Mike Hawkes tells me that the Specials are in fact off for an American tour this coming weekend, so it'll be interesting to see how American audiences take to them. This is a single from the Stick Shifts on the Chiswick label. This is called Automobile. Well, in my late 20s, and I still don't have an automobile. However, the Stick Shifts, and I definitely a single I like very much. And I must point out, it comes in a colored sleeve, and I've just been informed that, in fact, there are 3 different versions of the sleeve with 3 different vintage cars for collectors of record sleeves with cars on them. Joe Strummer. You wanted very much to sing along with that record because the lyrics were on the back as well.
It's got a Morris Minor on the front. No. Yeah, I don't have a car myself, so I can get behind the lyric, you know. I love to hear people sing like that anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I wonder if Rocky Sharp or the Replays or anything to do with the stick shifts, because it's very much the sound that they're associated with. John Tobler, you might know.
Well, I don't, actually, but Rocky Sharp and the Replays have just put out a much inferior record, their version of Martian Hop, on the same label, oddly enough. But
Yeah.
I think that was beautifully. Well done, you know, it's very good. Back to the 50s.
Bring back Dan Haggerty, I say.
Yeah,
What's
right.
happened to him, I wonder?
Well, I keep bumping into him in Ladbroke Grove, you know. He stuck out that record a while ago and it didn't do much.
No, that monster thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I forget what that was called.
I think he'd made an album, but they didn't want to release it for some reason. But,
He had definite stage presence, didn't he?
oh, yeah.
Just great.
Yeah. Do you think there's a wide market for this kind of music?
Unfortunately, not yet. But maybe this is one of the crazes that they're going to have to get to before long because all the others have been exhausted.
Barbershop revival, you mean?
That street corner stuff. Debbie.
It was interesting. It was fun. All I can say is bring back Fat Frankie and his calories.
Fat Frankie and his calories.
Yeah, if you're going to do this stuff.
I love that name. Another name that I remember of the 60s from America was Stark Naked and the Car Thieves. I don't know if they ever made that sort of music. Chris Stein, when the record came on, commented that he thought it sounded a bit like Queen when it started. Maybe the Queen audiences will go for it.
I doubt it.
Here's a couple of tracks from an album that I've been waiting for several months because it should have been out before now. It's the new album and debut album, too, from the Pretenders. I played several tracks from the album over the last 10 days. Here's two more now, Up the Neck and The Weight. Pretenders from the debut album, and that was written by Chrissy Hind, and I think it's a terrific debut. Debbie, I think that you enjoyed it. You kind of were bouncing around during that
very
track.
much. I really like that. A lot. She has a similar sound from like Patti Smith, but you know, it's her own thing as well. You know, it's very nice. Pretenders.
Yeah, she's got a strong voice. And I was saying to you, too, there seems to be an awful lot of girl-fronted groups around these days.
Yeah,
you know,
looks that way.
You know, you were right at the front there, of course. I mean, of all the bands that you've heard with girl sort of singers fronting the guys, like the Photos maybe, or Laurie and the Chameleons, or the Tourists, or those sort of, anybody that you particularly like?
Well, I actually haven't heard those groups, so I can't comment.
Okay. Joe?
Dusty Springfield's not bad.
Dusty, you? The Springfields. You remember the Springfields. Okay, what about the music you just heard then, Joe?
Yeah, that's great stuff, you know, like Patti Smith without the yodeling. Or yodeling, you know.
Yeah.
Great voice, great.
Yeah. Do you think 1980 is going to be the year for the Pretenders? I mean, the predictors really, things are about to happen.
Sure, as long as they don't take it easy.
How do you mean? Hard
A lot
work
of
at gigs?
competition out there.
Isn't that a good thing?
Sure.
I think there's a lot of gigs now, isn't there? If you look at in gig guides in the music papers, there's a lot of bands playing again. That's obviously a great thing. John Tobler.
Well, somebody said this was the first great album of the 80s, and I can't really disagree. I think it's an excellent debut. And,
It's only been going 2 weeks, hasn't it?
well, it says it's just the first, you know. I think the good thing about it is it doesn't appear to be self-indulgent. I mean, Patti Smith was noted, and she's incredibly self-indulgent, I think.
Yeah.
And she ruins most of her records by yodeling and other things. And this is good. It's really been done properly. It's been produced well as well. It's Chris Thomas, I think.
Yeah.
He's really worked hard with them, it seems. It's worth waiting for, because they might have had one out halfway through last year, I should think. But good for them for waiting.
Okay, we've got to get into the news, and there's a thing I want to talk about production to Debbie Harry, and because it's talking about production, which is obviously important to the making of records, although some people see producers as parasites and not that important. I think Joe has respect for Guy Stevens, and I think you for Mike Chapman, and certainly Chris Thomas knows his stuff as well. But we must play the Ramones before the news, and this is their new single called Baby, I Love You. And there we must leave the Ramones to make way for the news in a moment. But, Debbie, any comment after hearing that?
No, I'm really happy that they got together and that the record is finished and that it's out. Thank you.
Okay. John.
Thank you, God.
I'm glad to see that Phil Spector's back doing things, but I don't think this is what he's best at, to be perfectly honest. I don't think the marriage was really made in heaven.
Joe Strummer.
Bit dismal, really, you know, a bit ploddy.
I'd rather hear the Ramones to Rock and Roll High School or whatever. Okay, we have to break here, but we'll be back in about a minute. It's 6:30. Back to Kid Jensen.
Radio 1 Roundtable.
And my guests on the Roundtable tonight are Debbie Harry, Joe Strummer, John Tobler, and here are the Jags with Woman's World. Well, I was talking about all the girl rockers that there are around, and the Jags confirming that. Woman's World, and at long last somebody's recorded an answer to James Brown's It's a Man's World. Well, the Jags, they sound a lot like
Elvis Costello. No, actually, this seems like a pretty good record to me, and I heard a rumour the other day that the Jags was going long before Costello even started up, and it's the other way around, the way people figure it, and I think maybe Elvis ought to get these guys in to write him a few numbers or something,
Is that right?
Yeah.
So you were impressed?
Yeah, I was impressed with their last record,
Back of my hand.
I got your number.
Yeah.
On the back of my hand.
Okay, the Jags, Woman's World, John Tobler.
Well, I don't think the Elvis comparisons are quite as obvious as they seem. I mean, there's a guitar solo in this, for example. But I like the Jags. I thought the first record was rather better than this. This is a bit like a part two, but nevertheless, an album would be interesting to see what other things they can do. Because this sounds just like the same as the last one, Maybe it'll still be a hit, just like the last one, but who knows?
They've certainly got youth on their side. I mean, they look like a really young band. Debbie Harry?
Oh, well, unfortunately for me, I've never, heard their other single or their album. And, like the Elvis Costello thing is really obvious. But I definitely don't agree with the sentiment involved.
Okay. Now we're going to play Rickie Lee Jones, who's got yet another single release off her album, Rickie Lee Jones, which came out last year. This time, the record company, perhaps not her, have chosen Easy Money as a 45. Rickie Lee Jones and Easy Money. And it was fairly quiet in the studio when that record was being played. And I wonder, John, what you were thinking about when you were listening to it.
Not a lot.
It's an atmospheric record. It does conjure up a really lazy, Joe said, beatnik sort of lifestyle, of which, of course, she's associated because of her association with Tom Waits.
I don't really understand what the big deal is about people like Tom Waits and Rickie Lee Jones. I think they're okay, but I don't think that they're serious contenders for anything except cult status, and very minor cult status. It was pleasant, but I can't see what the big fuss is about, to be perfectly honest.
Maybe not innovative enough for you, or...?
It ain't rock and roll.
Okay, Joe, it's not rock and roll, but I got the impression you probably liked it.
It's not rock and roll, but it's going to be number one. I just like the slurring, I like the slobbering. I think it's great. It's got to admit, it's a touch of class on it.
Yeah, I think it's certainly a classy sound. I can't see it a million miles near the chart stuff. Debbie?
Yeah, I agree that it is an excellent sound, and the quality and the production is amazing. But in a way, I think it's totally unethical, and I think that they've been very calculating and very smart in doing this. But I can't really see where it's real gutsy. It seems to lack that.
You think Rickie Lee Jones, as a performer, you didn't think her performance was quite up to it?
Oh, no, I thought her performance was fine. I just think that in total, when you think about where this is coming from and what kind of feeling it's trying to achieve and what it's trying to do to the human condition, it's like off the mark. But yet other things about it are so on. They're so perfect. It's like a real clash.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. An interesting perspective. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Debbie, I want to ask you about Mike Chapman now, because I was talking to Joe earlier in the program about Guy Stevens. Now, what about your relationship with Mike Chapman? Because he really worked very well on the Parallel Lines album, and I'm wondering if there's any future plans to stay with Mike and for a future album.
I don't think that we have any specific plans. We're still on terrific friends with Chapman, and we have this great understanding, and we can easily work with him. You've really put me on the spot by asking that question.
Well, let me ask you then about forthcoming record plans, because Union City Blue was, the third track, at least, wasn't it, from the Parallel Lines to be released as Eat to the Beat, rather Eat to the Beat. If you've got any plans to go in the studio and get some new music down.
No, we don't have any specific plans. What we're trying to do now is record some live stuff, which we've never done.
Are you doing that here at the moment?
Yeah, we've done that up in Birmingham, and we're going to do it again.
when you are on stage now, do you play? I mean, how far back do your songs go? Do you do the whole thing? Because you've built up quite a hit repertoire for yourselves. Far less, I mean, the familiar album tracks. I mean, it must be difficult to decide what you're going to do and leave out. Or do you let the fans decide what you're going to play?
Well, no, we've just decided to, for our own benefit, to play a lot of new material. We do the whole new album, because it's better for us. We play more with more inspiration and more excitement, and then we do most of the songs that were singles in the UK.
Yeah. And for an encore, there's something about Louie Louie. Christmas.
Yeah, we do Louie Louie, we do James Brown, I Got You, and we might do a Four Tops number, which
those are songs.
Keep that a secret.
Oh, you're going to keep that a secret? I mean, there's except for people who come to see you at gigs, of course.
Of course.
Those songs, I guess, are favorites of yours, and that's why you perform those. I mean, from your younger days when you listened to records, were they? Is that why they're now part of your act?
Well, it's more of a sort of what we can pull off. We try a lot of different stuff, and then what seems to fall into place best. Because like on cover songs, it's sort of funny. Theoretically, you like a lot of music, but what you can really pull off and get behind for everybody, is very important. So.
I mean, some groups quite deliberately play their whole set and leave the biggest seller, the one that everybody wants to hear, as the encore. It's a very deliberate thing. Joe, what do you do as an encore? Do you have favorites, old rock and roll things that you like to do?
Well, I must admit, at Brighton, we pulled out Louie Louie, because we'd got Pete Townsend. He was at the show, and we dragged him up for the encore. We didn't tell him we were gonna, and he just came on. He was really game. He didn't know the numbers, but they'd done 3 of our numbers.
Oh, yeah?
And then they enjoyed it, the audience, so we just decided to go out and bash out an old slag of a number like Louie Louie,
I wish I'd been there
number.
to see that. Did he change the sound at all when he was up there playing?
Sure, he played great.
Yeah?
Really great. He didn't even know the numbers, but he just caught on straight away.
You didn't record that, did you?
No, we didn't record it, no. He looked great in a baggy green suit.
Listen, The Clash are very much a live band, because you obviously enjoy touring. You work very, very hard at it. I mean, are there any plans to do live stuff?
What, live tapes?
Yeah.
Well, every time we hear ourselves on a live tape, it sounds like a pretty duff, really. So when we might release something, if we heard of something
that you like, yeah.
No.
I think that's probably as well, because a lot of illusions are shattered when a band releases a live record and it wasn't as good as you remembered the concert to be, but then you think, well, the tape machine can't lie. Anyway, this is, or can it, John, I wonder?
I don't know. I've never made a live album yet.
Well, after your Van Morrison book, who knows, you might be in demand. This is Simple Minds, and a new single from them. This is called Changeling.
Yeah, it's exactly that.
We're just talking about the fact that the Doors had a single out, something about Changeling, or not a single out, but a song anyway, some time ago. John, you usually know about the history of records.
Well, I don't remember that particular one by the Doors, to be perfectly honest. They might have, but it certainly sounded like the Doors at the beginning, although I think towards the end it deteriorated a little, that record. They sounded very like Morrison the singer at the beginning of that, but it's quite an interesting record. I've never seen that band. Have you seen them, Kid?
No, I haven't. They've done a couple of sessions for my program. Their single that was out in the fall was a thing called Chelsea Girl, which I really still rate very highly, and I think it should have been a hit. I think it's the old thing. Some of my colleagues played it a bit more. It may have got a little bit further. But that's their new one, Changeling. And the funny thing is, they're obviously looking for some success, but the Chelsea Girl single seemed to have a little more commerciality about it than Changeling. This is a slightly heavier, but nonetheless, I personally like it very much. I think they're an interesting band,
Yeah,
it's a terrible word, interesting, because I should really define it more than that. I think they're an exciting band. Visually, they look great, and their sound is quite unique to themselves.
I wonder if it is possible for a band who are not based in London to make it big in this business. Maybe Joe's got some ideas about that.
Look at the Coventry scene, or that. You know what I mean?
Are they all still living in Coventry?
Yeah, they do.
Where are you living these days?
I'm living in the World's End estate.
London Calling. What was? I want to ask you this question. It may seem a bit obvious, but what the sentiment behind the single London Calling was?
Sentiment?
Yeah. What were you thinking? What sort of frame of mind when you?
Just like maybe a communication thing, Call out loud, Like we get to go to a lot of different parts of the place, We ain't never been to Australia like Debbie and the guys have, but we get around a little bit.
Sort of a loud and proud sort of thing. This is London Calling.
Yeah, trying to tell a bit of the truth along the way.
Yeah. Debbie, I will ask you about Simple Minds and Changeling.
Well, I seem to hear the word more mentioned quite a few times from between you and John here, so I think I would like to hear more from them.
Okay. This is UFO, who have a substantial following. There's not that many heavy metal bands around these days still charting. UFO certainly are, though. This is their follow-up just outside the chart this week. It's a thing called Young Blood. Right, UFO on tonight's Roundtable, and Young Blood in blood red vinyl, says the sleeve. And indeed it is. That's UFO. Joe Strummer, headbanging stuff. I mean, do you...
Yeah, well, I mean,
or...
I'm not a headbanging expert, you know, I must admit. I've never, you know, I don't really like sort of HM, I suppose is what this is. And, like, even I think by HM standards, this must be a bit of a daft number, really.
Mm. They've certainly lost that raw edge, which they had a couple of years ago, because their album and this single are very... I suppose more melodic is
yeah, I kept banging my head on the table, but no blood showed.
Debbie, I'm going to come to you and ask you what you thought of the song.
Well, I'm still alive, so...
We'll pass on that. John Tobler.
Yeah, right.
I think heavy metal should be heavier and louder and nastier if it's going to be any good. And I didn't think this was any of those. It was just kind of an average... I didn't think it was wild enough, you know? Again, the epitome of rock and roll is that it should be out of control, and that certainly wasn't. It was sounded terribly controlled and contrived to me.
That is a very interesting point, and maybe that's why I don't like heavy metal as much as I did at one time. I mean, I quite like AC/DC on stage as an exciting heavy metal band, but that's interesting you say control, because that's true. A lot of those kind of bands are now produced and the songs are arranged so much that a lot of that wildness is gone. And I'm wondering if there's any bands around today that you might know of that have still got the kind of edge which the heavy metal bands of the early sort of 70s had.
Well, I think somebody like Ted Nugent will continue to be outrageous.
Motorhead, says Joe. Yes, yes.
Or Meatloaf, I think, on the rare occasions that he appears live. I mean, it's very out of control. There's all kinds of things going on stage, and
Yeah.
and that's much more exciting than the sort of macho strutting with the bare chest and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's a bit outmoded these days, I think.
You've got one there, John.
It's because I've got a tie.
An interesting
It's
point.
hairy, too.
Right, here's the Revillos, another girl-fronted band, Faye Fife and her fellas, and this is called Motorbike Beat. You knew that was going to happen, did you, Joe?
Guessed.
Well, it's short and to the point. The Revillos, Eugene Reynolds, Faye Fife, Robbo Rhythm, Hi-Fi Harris, and Felix. And a bit of an oddity, really, on Din Discs Records. What did you make of it, Joe? You said you'd seen it before on television.
Yeah, I'd seen them do it on BBC Two, and I think when you hear a record, the way I judge it is I think, would I like to hear this 5-7 times a day coming out of my radio, you know?
Yeah.
Or will it be a drag? But this one, I think it's so poppy and up tempo. I think it would be a bit of a tonic, you know?
Mm.
And I hope that, you know, they sell something and it gets up there.
Okay. Well, they've certainly been trying over the last couple of years. John Tobler.
Yeah, there is a much better record than their last one, and than some of the Resillos' later discs.
Debbie Harry, the Revillos.
Oh, yeah. Well, I sort of like the Salvador Dali intro and ending there, and I know that my drummer, Clem Burke, is really hot for the mod thing, and this is very campy and poppy, so wish him a lot of luck.
Okay. Now, I want to talk to you about the film from which we've read so much but still have yet to see in this country, which is Union City Blue, and ask you maybe if you know when we're going to be seeing it at long last here, because presumably people have been talking to you about the film here in interviews and the press and all that sort of stuff. Any plans for a release date yet?
No, I just talked to Mark Reichert this morning. He's the director, and he also wrote the screenplay, and they don't have it together to release it yet. They don't even have a distributor for this country, so... You know, that's what's happening with that. And it's called Union City. It's not called Union City Blue. The song Union City Blue is about what it was like for me to be doing that and getting up at 5:30 in the morning.
Oh, I see. So that's not from the film.
No, separate. And this movie is it's not a rock and roll movie. I want to make that perfectly clear. It's this very sad story. It's straight drama. It takes place in 1953 in Union City, New Jersey. And that's what it's about. But we did do a rock and roll movie called The Roadie, with Mr. Meatloaf, who John just mentioned before.
Yeah.
And we play ourselves in it, and we play live, you know, in the movie, and it's everybody from Blondie, you know. We act like jerks and run around, and that's about it.
Like the Monkees or something.
Yeah, it's a rock and roll comedy, that kind of thing. It's very light.
It's a fun thing.
Yeah.
I mean, presumably you took the Union City film fairly seriously if it's a straight film, and you've seen it now on the silver screen. And how are you happy with your performance now, having lived through it?
Yeah.
5:30 in the morning.
I'm fairly objective about it. I'm not totally objective. I think the film really came together due to the fact that Chris Stein wrote the music, but it's I'm prejudiced.
Are you going to be doing any more? That's
Movies?
obviously straight films as opposed to the rock and roll ones.
I don't know. It remains to be seen.
What are you doing? Waiting for an offer? I guess you must be getting scripts and things coming in.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. Joe, now I remember reading something recently in one of the music papers about a film that you were involved in. What was this?
Well, this is, we're having a big argument, of course, with the people who made it, you know, with, like, fighting each other with lawyers and stuff, but our position's never been made clear. Like, we say that they can show the film as much as they like.
Is it a music film? Rock and roll?
Yeah, there's a lot of Clash songs in it, but providing they don't charge admission, right, because we've seen it. And we feel it's a little bit boring, especially the part with 250s going on £3, you know, to see it. And, like, they can show it as much as they want, anywhere they like, you know, on the sides of buildings, anywhere. Providing they don't charge any admission, you know, but they want to go ahead and try and make some dough out of it, and we're going to try and stop them.
Is that, well, I've never heard that before. I can't actually see distributors releasing a movie for nothing. John?
Well, they stitched us up, you know.
Yeah.
No, I suppose a lot of these things start out as being good ideas. It's very difficult to carry them through as it carries on, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, did you ever like the idea of the film?
Yeah, sure, you know, we really worked hard on it.
I mean, that must be a real shame. So would you like to do something else then, or in a different way?
Well, we're kind of working on something along the lines of a Second World War film, you know, but that'll take about 5, 10, 15 years.
Yeah, it's a fairly time-consuming thing, isn't it?
Big project.
All right, Joe, this track is included just for you because the album's been out a few weeks now. It's a reggae compilation. It's called On the Wire and features the works of Lee Perry, a man who's produced a lot of people like George Faith and Max Romeo and the Meditations, Augustus Pablo, and you?
Yeah, he done Complete Control.
That's right. And this is the track that I like best on the album, and I hope you do too. It's Soldier and Police War. Scratch on the Wire is the compilation album, and from it, a track I remember playing a lot on Saturday mornings when I used to do that show on Radio 1. That was Soldier and Police War with Junior Mervyn wailing away in the background. I mean, that really is strange, isn't it, the way the Jamaicans do that, take somebody's song. Obviously he did Police and Thieves by Junior Mervyn as well, Lee Perry, and then have Ja Lyon toasting over top of it.
It's a great idea, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, presumably you're familiar with the track.
Oh, yeah, I mean, what can you say about a great song like that? And I think I'd even prefer to hear just Junior Mervyn on it because of his high, pure voice, you know, the way he sings it. It's just unbeatable. But that was great, really great.
I often wonder, and you might know, what people like Junior Mervyn do for a main living, because, I mean, Britain seems to be the only country outside of Jamaica where there's an interest in this form of music. So, and there seems to be so many artists releasing 1 or 2 singles, and you never hear from them again. I mean, what do they do? Are they taxi drivers normally, or
they drive about on CB200s, delivering little brown packets from pillar to post.
I see. This is the second occupation. What about reggae now, as we know it in Britain? I mean, obviously it's made great inroads. The Police have taken the rhythm of reggae and have used the space that reggae has very effectively on the Regatta de Blanc. And you've used another side of reggae. I mean, you've used the kind of urgency and the reggae often has a message that it can bring home. What do you, looking upon like the music of Police, how do you view the way they do it?
Well, you know, I think obviously that's one of their main rip-off points. But I don't know, I kind of turn 3 shades of purple and green and start spitting and frothing at the mouth when you mention the Police, you know. So,
oh, really? Why is that?
Maybe I'm jealous. I don't think much of it, let's just say that.
All right. I mean, I rate them very, very highly because of the way they fused that reggae. And as I said, you've done it a totally different way, you know. Do you think you'll still continue to do that, or are you going to...
Yeah, I mean, when we hear a great reggae song, you know, we can't help but cover it, you know, like we just covered Willie Williams' Armageddon Time, you know, and that one by him really should be a #1 in Britain, you know, if we can get over the years like the Israelites, Paterna, Django, on and on, up the charts, I'm sure we could get that one. You know, it's been hot in the reggae charts for a long time.
It must be worth digging out sometime then. Debbie, Harry.
Oh, I always enjoy hearing a good cover, a good song being covered.
And the whole reggae and Lee Perry's music, are you familiar very much with that?
Well, no, reggae is, there's like one station in New York that covers reggae.
Yeah, and is that probably Bob Marley they play then, is it? Many other
No, they
people?
play some pretty weird stuff, you know. There's quite a big Jamaican community, you know, in New York and West Indian community.
I think the best place on British radio to hear reggae must be Peel's program, because he has an enormous selection of reggae, and he spends a lot of money going to specialist reggae stores and picking up on some very interesting music. John Tobler.
I think that reggae could benefit by being a bit better organised, because so much of the time you're talking about pre-release records, and a lot of people don't know where to get them, I think. And they don't get played on the radio very much.
Yeah.
It just doesn't get exposed enough. The good reggae is excellent. There's a lot of bad reggae about, as I was saying earlier. But I think this is all right. But where do we stop? Where do we stop doing dub versions of records that already are? I mean, there's no need to record anything new. You just the Ella Fitzgerald sings George Gershwin dub. You know.
Yeah, let's have it.
Another interesting point from John. I'm going to play a couple of tracks from the Lena Lovitch album, which is just out and new, and it's called Flex. And from it, The Night, her version of Frankie Valli's The Night. Also this one, What Will I Do Without You? Lena Lovitch from Flex, her new album release. And The Night and What Will I Do Without You are two tracks. And Debbie, it's a bit cold here in the studio while that record is being played.
Yes, it's getting colder.
We're trying to warm ourselves up a little bit. And it wasn't by dancing. But, however, tell me about Lena Lovitch and what she
Well, I
means to
really
you.
liked the first one, My Lucky Numbers one, or whatever, you know what that one.
Yeah.
These two didn't really kill me, and I didn't like the production as much.
Okay. John?
Well, one of my favourite all-time records is The Night by Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. It's great, but I mean that was nothing like it. It was a disco doubles kind of effort. I thought, you know, really an inferior version. If you're going to cover something, I think you've got to either do it differently or do it better, and that was neither.
Yes, that's a point. She hasn't strayed from the original too much. What about Joe Strummer? then?
Likewise for me, you know, that didn't really grab me at all. You know, it's not as catchy as what she's dished out before.
Yeah. I must point out that two singles are on the album as well. Angels, which is a current, and the one before, which is Birdsong, is also on the album too, besides those other two songs. This is Neil Diamond, and a new single from him on CBS, written by Neil and Gilbert Bicot. This is called September Morning. Really for Joe and for Debbie, who wanted to hear that particular record, because we've got lots of records we won't play, but that out of the pile, by way of a contrast, Neil Diamond, and that was September Morning. Are you glad you heard it now, Joe?
No, I'm not actually. You know, I think it's just absolute drivel. You know, I know that he can come up with stuff that's 50 times better than this.
Which of his past songs do you like best?
I like almost all of the singles he's done, you know. It's an American popular song, stuff like, you know, it swings, it's got a beat, you know, this is just slush.
Okay, Debbie?
Yes, I think he's been in the lounge too long, and, you know, this one just didn't give me goosebumps.
John, what about you? If the song's one, I'm sure the temperature will in here. John?
Rubbish.
Fine, and on that succinct note, I want to talk to Joe a little bit about the tour, which they're just undertaking, and Cosmo Vinyl, ever-present man around the Clash, has given me a list of dates, and they really fill a full sheet of foolscap. It's a really extensive tour, but something interesting about the tour is that you've got a lot of young bands from the towns that you're playing in supporting you. Who sort of searched out these bands? Like tonight you're in Crawley, and you've got the Escalators from that area playing at the Leisure Centre. Who went and found them?
Yeah, well, Mr. Vinyl here has done all the spade work. A lot of those people have been sending in cassettes, and he's been handing out the bookings.
Oh, I see. All right. Well, to give you an idea where the Clash are going to be immediately, tomorrow they're at Hastings Pier with Second... Who is that? Second Nowhere, I think. Cosmo's writing anyway.
Second Nature.
Second Nature. Terrible penmanship. Sunday's off day for the Clash. Monday the 14th, they're in Ipswich with the Kids Next Door. Wednesday the 16th, they're in Leicester at the famous De Montfort Hall with the Pneumatics, and I shall keep you posted on future dates as well whenever I play tracks from London Calling. Now, this is a record that I've been looking forward to playing because it's my record of the week next week from a band I rate pretty highly, Matchbox, and this is Buzz Buzz a Diddle It. Well, while we haven't had much exciting rock and roll from America recently, Britain's rock and roll bands are certainly in top form. Matchbox, the #1 band. Buzz Buzz Diddle It on Magnet Records is their new single, and that warmed things up in the studio a little bit more. Debbie, Harry.
Oh, yeah. I wish that we could get this kind of stuff really on the air in the States, and that I think perhaps you should get the Kid Jensen show, syndicated somehow,
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
And this one was a real nice synthesis and very sincere and exciting.
Great. Okay, Joe.
Yeah, I think it's a great record, just it's got a great feeling to it, and I'd like to hear it on the radio a lot more.
Good. Well, I'll be playing it every day next week at least once. John Tobler.
It's a Freddie Cannon song. Did you know that, kid?
I didn't. I knew that you'd know it somehow.
Freddie Cannon. It's a great record. It's off their album, and it's just one of several tracks that could easily be hit singles. I'm really glad they've got through. This is a band that's been going for years and years and years without much success, but now they've got their big break. They seem to be taking it really fast, and that's great. They're an excellent band live.
Good. All right. Thank you, John Tobler. Debbie, what about Blondie's dates now? You're in Hammersmith tonight, the famous Odeon.
Yes.
And the weekend as well, aren't you?
Yeah, I think we're there for 2 or 3 nights. Don't ask me to be explicit. I don't know.
Yeah, you're with a British rock and roll band as well, Whirlwind.
Yeah.
Oh, they're with you,
Whirlwind.
rather. Yeah.
We're having a nice tour with them. They're nice guys. And then we're going on to Paris for one show. And we're having a local group open up for us in Paris called Casino Music. Then we're coming back here, and I think we're going to be up in the D-Side Leisure Center around Liverpool.
So when do you get to go back home to New York?
I don't know. Probably about maybe the 25th of January or something like that. I'm not sure. We're seeing if we can, throw in some more dates somewhere.
So you're not suffering from homesickness yet?
Nah. No, hardly.
Okay. Listen,
Are you kidding?
I've got time just to give you a little bit of a snatch from a new single from JoJo Zepp and the Falcons, and appropriately enough, this is Soon You'll Be Gone, and we will. That's where I have to leave. JoJo Zepp and the Falcons, and Soon You'll Be Gone. And for me, the program has really ended on the 2 best records of the show. Debbie?
Yeah. I saw JoJo's up in the Falcons, and he really impressed me. He's got real style, and coming out of Australia, it's a real nice thing.
Okay, Joe, you thought the song was familiar?
Yeah, it's an old rock steady hit, I think, but
Oh, yeah?
I'd give that 10 out of 10 any day of the week.
All right, and John Tobler.
Yeah, nice record. I'd like to see JoJo Zepp and the Falcons touring England.
I wonder if there's any plans.
Well, the Sports have come here, so it can't be too far.
Your plans for the weekend, are you going to be on Rock On?
Yeah, I'm doing a thing about politics in rock, actually.
Okay. I hope the rest of your weekend goes just fine then. Debbie, thanks for coming back, and I hope you'll be back a 4th time. Right.
Okay.
Debbie, Harry, good luck with your gigs, and the same to you, Joe Strummer.
Good night.
Thank you, and good night. That's the Roundtable. I'll be back Monday afternoon at 4:30, but now on this Friday night at 7:30, it's Annie Nightingale.
Thanks, kid.